Hello, welcome to the video. Today I just wanted to go ahead and do a follow-up to the static strike ward stacking gladiator build. I had a couple questions that I just wanted to go over here for people, as well as show how I crafted a lot of this rare gear here. A lot of people had questions on the crafting, so I figured I'd go over that as well as a few changes that I made to the build that aren't necessary but are a little bit more feels good. So the one main question that I had was regarding ambush and the cast on ward break. A lot of people seem to think that it wouldn't trigger. So the way it works is when we attack, our ward will break and then we will cast ambush. And now obviously that means that we're attacking and we're casting at the same time. So a lot of people figured if that happens and we're attacking and we have the buff already, it'll override the buff and then we won't get the exert. This isn't true. That's why I'm using the Okoya's Gaze here. The first attack will not have the ambush one. So it's always going to be your second attack that will have the ambush trigger, and then every attack afterwards, as long as you're attacking while you have the ambush buff up. So you need to make sure after your static strike is about to run out, maybe with like a second or two left, go to attack just to make sure you get that ambush buff, and then attack again, so that way you get the crit from it as well. And the reason we're using Okoya's Gaze is because it makes it so non-exerted attacks deal no damage. So it's a perfect way for us to see here. And then I also, in testing before, was using Paradoxica, but I actually, with this setup, without the accuracy from the helmet, my hit chance wasn't 100%, so I just threw on a weapon here that literally has no stats. It just gives us hits can't be evaded, so that way we can make sure that the testing is correct here. So let's see, when we go up to a pack here, this first attack should not hit and deal any damage, and it doesn't. And then that second attack, once we had that buff active here, you can see that going, works. So it is snapshotting that ambush for the whole duration there. It is working as intended. Just for anybody who wasn't sure, I know I had a couple people asking, and I just wanted to go ahead and give an example of that, just so that way you could see how it was working. But yeah, so it is unfortunate that we have to attack twice when going into a pack to get that buff. If you wanted to, you could play without that and get that buff immediately. But if you're doing it without cast on ward break, just keep in mind you will have ambush with its regular cooldown, which is a base 5 seconds. You can get it lower using cooldown recovery support instead of cast on ward break. And then it's like a 3.5 second cooldown instead. So if you wanted to do it that way, if you're fine with pressing another button, that's definitely an option. But I think this is still definitely more quality of life versus just casting it on its own. The other question I had, while we're still regarding exerts, a lot of people were asking why go Paradoxica when it snapshots. You could snapshot I believe it's Intimidating Cry that does double damage as well. And while that does work, unfortunately, with ambush, it specifically will not, if you can see on the line here, it attacks by the skill cannot be exerted by other skills. So we either get ambush or we get the exerts from other skills. We can't get both. So that's why we're just using ambush in this setup here. I'm going to go ahead and put this back on. I'll swap out the passes we were borrowing here. The other change while I'm in here that I'll show is that I did get Runegraph of the Warp. The way this works is it unfortunately, even though it does count as a buff, and it is affected by temp chains and everything for some reason, the Gathering Lightning buff is not affected by Runegraph of the Warp, which is a big downside. Really, really disappointing. I hope this is just a bug and it gets fixed in the future, but at the moment, that's just how it works. But I do still recommend getting this Runegraph later on if you have extra currency and you don't have anything else to upgrade at the time, just because of the fact that it increases the time on the ambush buff. So I'll show an example here. See, you can see that blue timer means it's getting extended by a buff extender. So, and the same thing with Static Strike, it doesn't have that blue, so it's not getting affected by that buff timer. But you see our Fortify is affected by it, our Ambush is affected by it, our Mortal Call is increased, our Phase Run is increased. So Runegraph of the Warp is just really good for our build. We have a lot of buffs that having that extra time for is really nice. So The other thing that I changed, as you could tell, is I am using Writhing Jar now because of the fact that Ambush does not work on the first attack. I wanted to do a little bit of a change up in this. I felt like the flask wasn't really doing a whole lot with what it had on it before anyways. With Writhing Jar, because of the fact that Hydrosphere doesn't count as an enemy, even though we attack it, we get Static Strike, but we don't get that Exert buff right off the bat. So it's kind of, we're getting damage, but it's not great damage. With Writhing Jar, you spawn the enemies, you attack them, you get ambush, and then you can immediately attack a group of enemies and go into it. I'm still going to use Hydrosphere because it's a great way to apply exposure without having to use it on the gloves here. I mean, not having it on the gloves means we get an extra 31% increased damage, so I think it's definitely a good trade-off for the dual socket. And it does do a little bit of damage on its own too. So that's why we swapped out the flask here. That's pretty much it. The only other tech change I did was I did swap out Chain Hook of Troarthus. I do like it. I still think it's great. You can keep using it if you want, but I found that Blade Storm of Uncertainty had really good synergy with the build if you get level 1 Rage on it. If people don't know, I originally didn't know as well. That's why I wasn't using it at first. I actually had a copy. I had assumed that Rage support level 1 only granted 1 Rage on attack hit. I haven't used it before, so I didn't know. But it actually gives 3 Rage on attack hit, and it gives 10% attack speed while you have at least 10 Rage, which is just great for keeping it going. It means that it gets attack speed even when it doesn't, like we don't have to link it to faster attacks or anything. And we can link it to more duration here. Since Blade Storm is a duration-based skill, we can do multiple of them, unlike Chain Hook. So we can pop down, I think it's 5 total of these, and each one lasts 8 seconds. It's like when we're doing Harvest or the Ubers, we can just pop down a couple of these. The blood ones will stay right where you are. So if you use the skill, it is an attack, and you teleport with Ambush onto an enemy, it'll immediately pop down one of these. And if you pop down a blood one, obviously it'll just stick on the enemy. You can just walk around. The blood ones give you more attack speed while you're in them, which is kind of nice. It doesn't really affect us too much, but the sand ones, if you're using this skill to move around, like once you have Static Strike active, if you use this to teleport onto a pack, and you get that sand one here, I'll try and get another one here so you can see. It does give you a nice little movement speed bonus, so you can run through them and it'll give you some move speed. It's not great. I wouldn't try to play around it, but the rage part is the most important part. It generates us rage so much faster than Chain Hook did. So if you can get this, I would recommend it. It's the best feeling duration skill that I could find to go for this. If you want to use something else, you can, just as long as it's a rage generator. I really recommend doing that over like getting rage support on your Static Strike, because Inspiration is so much damage. The other thing too with Inspiration here, you don't need this specific one. Inspiration can be swapped out with Fortify. So if you get Fortify on your gem, you can go ahead and put Inspiration in the links, and that'll be pretty, it's actually I think more damage. So yeah, those are both pretty good options. And then that's pretty much it for tech changes. I did take Phase Run out of automation, so that way you can just click it. The reason I did this is because while it adds a button to the build, you can just hold down right click and keep Phase Run active while you're mapping, so you don't have to press anything or like constantly keep tapping it. And I felt comfortable doing this. You don't have to. If you don't want to, just like take out more duration and put in automation, and then you're good to go. So the duration is already so long that it's well past the cooldown recovery, so I can keep this up permanently. The other thing though is that Phase Run also consumes your frenzy charges, and I didn't want to have that automated on bosses, just to have maximum frenzy uptime. So those are the few changes. Otherwise, everything else is the same. You'll see the mana reservation is a little bit lower. That's because since I had the extra gem socket, I did fit in Arctic armor. gives us a little bit more fizz damage reduction, fire damage reduction while standing still. Gives that immunity to freeze, which means we can drop Brine King and instead run Soul of our Akali, which I am going to upgrade. All of these upgrade options are amazing for our build. The debuffs expire faster, synergizes with the Rune Graft of the Warp. 40% Chaos Res against damage over time is amazing because that's the only time where Chaos damage really matters for us. And the recovery rate is pretty nice too. That's the other thing about the Writhing Jar. Recovery rate maps are a little bit of a pain for this build to deal with normally. So if you don't have instant recovery on your hybrid flask here, then it can make life a little bit more difficult. So Writhing Jar solving that just feels good. Because if you don't know, instant recovery does get past that reduced recovery on maps. It is instant, so there's no worry about the recovery rate. But yeah, and then the other changes, I did swap the Solar Ralakesh over to Soul of Latha, so that we can get charges for this just passively. It feels pretty comfortable. I didn't really ever get bled, and whenever I did get bled, it never did enough damage to where I needed to worry about it, and I could just stop moving and not care because this build can just do that. You can just stand still and block and not have to worry about dying when you have bleed, so if you don't feel comfortable doing that, you don't need this one. I just swapped it because I liked it, so there's that. Another thing I wanted to mention that I started doing myself today is you'll notice my Yindas now has 66% armor and evasion from equipped body armor. That's because it did roll at 55%, which is over 50. And the way that you do this is with one of the new currency items. It's the Volatile Vault Orb. These cost just under a divine. It has a 50% chance to delete the item when it procs, so only do this when you have enough money to buy a replacement Yindas. Please do not delete your Yindas and then brick your build. That would be probably not a great idea. But it can also, even if it does corrupt it, go lower. So you could end up getting your Yindas down to, I believe the lowest I saw was a 50% with quality on, which obviously is not good. So it is a gamble. Again, I would recommend only doing this when you've got the extra money to spare. But it is pretty nice. It can affect the other rolls too. Like you'll see this Fire Res here is a 35%er. They can go, I believe it's down by like, it's a 0.75 multiplier to a 1.22 multiplier, I think is what it showed. I don't know how accurate that is. But I did see some of these Yindas up to like 70% as well, so you can get pretty high. That would be something I would recommend doing later on once you've got all your upgrades done. Now, as far as crafting, I'll make this pretty quick. These pieces of gear are all basically the same crafting-wise. When you're doing your initial ones, you're going to want to use dense fossils and just dense fossils. They are around 9 chaos a piece right now. And what they do is they make it so you don't have to worry about life modifiers rolling, and it rolls more defense modifiers. You can do the harvest craft for defense, but it's only one guaranteed defense modifier, so it will take a lot longer, significantly longer. I did try using that in previous leagues when I played ward stackers, and it took just way too long. So just bite the bullet, use dense fossils, you plan ahead to be spending a few divines on crafting each piece of gear. If you don't want to wait, I am trying to craft some. It looks like most of them are sold now, but I'm trying to craft a few and put them up for sale for you guys so you have options there. As far as the gloves, I did change them over, so everything else, you can kind of do the dense fossil spam. You're just looking for ward and faster restoration of ward, which are both defense modifiers. And then with the gloves, you have to get the temple mod on these, since they don't spawn naturally, recombinate. And you'll have to recombinate a pair of runic gloves with another pair that either has the increased damage with hits against chilled enemies, increased critical chance against shocked enemies, or increased, I believe it's flat fire damage against burning enemies. And if you get the shocked or burning enemy ones, you can use the resistance to your modifier change and change it over to cold, and you can actually use that to divine it as well because it changes the roll every time it does it. That's how I got my 50%. And basically, once you have it recombinated and you have the max rolled version, you want to get it down to 4 mods. Using Eldritch currency, you can remove prefixes, and that'll always be the best option. You never want to try and affect the suffixes and pull off suffixes. If the suffixes are full, just just remove all but one prefix. You only want to have 4 modifiers on there when you go to fracture, because that is the lowest amount you can have when you go to fracture. Gives you a 1 in 4 chance. If you fail, you're gonna have to go again. Unfortunately, that's just how it goes. Once you have the fracture, try and finish suffixes first. So dense fossil spam or defense spam. In this situation, you can probably defense spam because you're only looking for 1 modifier. And then try and get that tier 1 faster restoration of ward, and then an open suffix or dex. If you get them at the same time, you're done. If you have an open suffix, then you would do suffixes cannot be changed and reforge a tribute and get your dex on there that way, and then your suffixes are done. And then you'll just use Eldritch nulls and exalts to go. You don't have to use the Eldritch ones, you can just use regular exalts, they're cheaper. To go ahead and get T1 flat ward and either T1 or T2% ward like I have on here. And then an open prefix to craft on that increased damage while leeching. And that's it for the gloves. The rest of these, for the helmet, pretty similar. You want to do dense fossil spam until you get good ward prefixes and faster restoration of ward on the suffixes. If you get faster restoration of ward on the suffixes and an open prefix along with 2 of them, like I had here, I had the ward and max life was the last prefix that I exalted on. You can just do suffixes cannot be changed and then do a veiled exalt orb and then get the dex and int on that way. And then for the accuracy, it's a little bit tougher. You either want to, once you have it at that point, if you have an open suffix, do the same thing. If you have an open prefix, do suffixes cannot be changed, and then do the reforge attack to get it on there. It is a little sketchy to do it that way, but that's the way I did it. Or you can do it the other way around and do suffixes cannot be changed, reforge attack before you do the veiled, and then do it that way. I prefer doing the veiled exalt first just because then it's 50-50. It's either going to remove one of your ward modifiers or it's going to remove the suffixes cannot be changed and add a modifier on. If it removes the suffixes cannot be changed, it can also add a prefix, and then you would have to use a Eldritch currency to remove a prefix, so that way you can do it again, and then you'd have to fix your prefixes later. Basically, same thing. I mean, if you can get your prefixes done while you're searching for that faster restoration of ward, and then safely get on that dex and int and accuracy, then you can finish this pretty easily. Otherwise, I would just focus on the suffixes first, and then go for a fracture once you have suffixes plus like T1% ward or T1 flat ward on there. And then if you fracture a suffix, it's whatever. But if you fracture the single prefix on there, then it makes crafting the prefixes a little bit easier, because then you can just Eldritch Annul and Exalt for 2 mods. So it's a lot less time wasted to do it that way. And then as far as the boots, it's pretty similar to the helmet. This one, since you're going for Chaos Res, you're going to Dense Fossil spam until you get the Faster Restoration of Ward. Open suffixes, if you don't have full open suffixes, you're going to want to annul until you have full open suffixes. Then do suffixes cannot be changed, Reforge Chaos, and then you'll get that Chaos Res on there. And then there's not really a great way to do it. You could do suffixes cannot be changed and then reforge one of the elementals to try and get the elemental res. But you could also just exalt there's a pretty high chance that you'll hit res, so it's up to you. If you want more of a guaranteed way to get it, then I would recommend doing suffixes cannot be changed. Excuse me, reforge fire resistance. And then after that, use Eldritch Currency to go ahead and get the 2 prefixes. 2 prefixes isn't too hard, and then you can just craft on the increased movement speed. If you want, you can get a little bit more move speed. If at this point you have the 2 prefixes, you can go ahead and do suffixes cannot be changed, Veiled Exalt Orb. But it does have a 50-50 chance. Well, actually, it's more than that. It's a 2 in 3 chance that it'll remove one of your prefixes, and then you'll have to redo your prefixes. So it's pretty spendy. I wouldn't recommend it, especially because it does take quite a while to do the annul and exalt to get the 2 T1 modifiers in the first place. So crafted, you're only losing up to 10%. It is a roll, even if you get the veiled modifier, so you might not even get the 30% move speed. It might only be like a 7% increase. Really not worth it, in my opinion. 100% chance to avoid being chilled is the most important part. And then when it comes to the body armor, there is a slightly longer crafting process for this one. So what you want to do initially is get a high quality base. Typically they'll be cheaper if you get them under eye level 86, because eye level 86 is required for the T1 increased armor and evasion roll. So what you'll want to do is buy a high quality base that's eye level 84, maybe somewhere around like 83 is where I feel more comfortable. And then you'll want to recombinate it in here with an item level 100 base to try and get the item level up. If you don't, just go again, keep going until you get a high item level base to start with. And then I would recommend first, if you have a non-split base, splitting it. I didn't do it in this case, but I recommend doing it because they are worth a lot as bases. So don't be dumb like I am. Split your base. And then once you have that base split, make it normal, and then apply some tailoring orbs. I'll show you what those look like in here. Applying the tailoring orb here, they're around 70 chaos. They're actually not too spendy. You can either get the 8% increased explicit defense modifier magnitudes, or there is a 12% one, but the 12% one comes with a downside of 50% reduced resistance modifiers. So if you get that one, you'll probably just want to get your resistances like I have the T1 lightning and T2 chaos on here. You'll want to get the one of those on here instead of dex. So I'll probably do like either lightning or chaos, and then you'll get dex on here instead. And that is pretty much it. And then once you get the increased explicit modifier magnitudes on there for the enchant, you'll be good to go. Before you start using your dense fossils on this one, I would recommend using while it's still a normal base, use an Orb of Remembrance, and that'll give it some memory strands. Try and get like 60 to 70. And then once you have those memory strands on there, you'll need to alch it, make it a rare, so that way you can start using the fossils on it. If the strands go down below 50, I would recommend just making it normal and using an Orb of Remembrance on it again. I mean, they're 40 chaos, they're pretty cheap. And then once you have those on there, the reason why we want to use those is once we get going with the dense fossil spamming, you'll hit T1 and multiple T2s, or double T2s and or you'll hit double T2, T1 pretty often, and double T1, T2 sometimes as well. That's actually what I did with this armor. I hit double T1 and a T2 flat. And since you have those strands on there, you can use Orb of Unraveling. With just those modifiers, you can clear the suffixes out, and if there's one T2 or two T2 modifiers, it'll have a pretty high chance to upgrade those to T1. And obviously, if you miss with that, I would recommend starting over at that point. So just scour it, put an Orb of Remembrance on, alch it back to rare, make sure you have 50 strands, and then start fossil spamming it again until you get Orb of Unraveling it. once you have the prefixes finished, it's pretty easy to do the suffixes. You just use Eldritch Currency again. You can do for Chaos Res, just do prefixes cannot be changed, reforge Chaos. And then if it fills the suffixes when it reforges, you can just use Eldritch Orb of Annulments and then remove the extra modifiers and go again. I stopped at T2 because I really didn't care about the small difference. But you can go for T1 as long as you want. There's really no limit, because once your prefixes are done, they're done for good. And yeah, that's it. That's pretty much all for crafting these here. If you have any other questions regarding anything else that I might have missed in here, please let me know in the description. If you're enjoying the build, let me know as well. I love to hear your guys' feedback. If you notice, I am pretty active in the comments, so if you have any questions, I'll try to answer them as quick as I can. If you have any recommendations for things you want me to test or anything like that, I can go ahead and take a look and let you know. But otherwise, yeah, that is it for the updates.